Today on Locked On Red Wings, we welcome back Andrew Rinaldi of the Calder Times as we ask what the heck went wrong with the Grand Rapids Griffins this season.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty's a host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a sports writer for C&G newspapers, while I am a color commentator for Oakland University ACHA D1 men's hockey. And today we are very happy to have Andrew Rinaldi of the Calder Times back. He is a beat writer for both the Grand Rapids Griffins and the Chicago Wolves, but we don't talk about that other one too often because it's kind of insane that he'd cover Chicago sports at the same time. But Andrew, welcome back. How you doing, man?
My Beats went 0-5 in the playoffs this year, so it wasn't. It was pretty rough, but that's part of the give and take in sports. I'm glad to be back on. Appreciate you guys having me.
The Rinaldi curse.
People are saying.
I don't know, dude. Streets are talking.
I mean, my first season in Chicago, they went and won the Calder Cup. So,
all right, well, that's a good rebuttal to that.
The streets are wrong. Not us. The streets are wrong. Andrew, obviously today we'll only beat you up on one of those two teams, focusing on the Grand Rapids Griffins, the Red Wings affiliate, because I watched the final two games of the regular season. I went to one earlier in the year. They won that one in a shootout, but I digress. Those two games, including the three they played in the playoffs, that was not the Griffins team that we had seen earlier in the season. That was not the Griffins team we saw last year into the playoffs. This was a team that could not score goals for the life of them, and were just making lapses defensively like crazy, turnovers all over the place. What went wrong with this Griffins team? Why did they turn into this mess?
I've been asking myself that for months now at this point. I think there were signs earlier in the season where, the Griffins maybe were getting hemmed in their own zone a bit. There was kind of worrying patterns about them getting outshot pretty consistently and just not having the puck enough. And you have a hot goalie in Sebastian Cossa that can maybe cover up those problems, or defensive structure that's not really leaking all over the place, where you can keep those shots to the outside and not out of the high danger areas. Okay, it might not be pretty hockey, but you're piling the points up. It's not really super concerning in the moment. And then in the beginning of February, the Colorado Eagles come into town, and for the listeners, who I'm sure is everyone, are not very concerned, the Colorado Eagles are one of the best teams in the league, still in the playoffs, and they feed your lunch to you. They shut you out in both games, and it's really just not close. And you're like, well, that's kind of concerning. A top team coming in, and this team doesn't really look well. And it just spiraled out of control following that. And, you can kind of coincide with Elmer Soderblom got called up right before that series and everything. But, I mean, this is a team that really was without Carter Mazur for 80% of the year and didn't seem to miss him after his great season last year. Big chunks missed without Amadeus Lombardi, and they were still in first in the division. And Lombardi comes back and you're still without Mazur. It is what it is, but there's veteran presence on this team, and you figure, okay, eventually they'll correct it. They'll be fine. And, it's been such a big emphasis on this coaching staff about compete level, about, okay, you might not have the most talent, but you're going to come out and you're going to work every night. And there's just so many instances of these last few months, and alarmingly in this postseason, where it just looked like the team just gave up. Like they felt sorry for themselves, and it's like, well, what are you going to do? Like they look like Toronto last night, where you're not giving a fight in your own barn. What are we doing? So it concerning, I would say, to say the least. And then you get into the postseason, and a well-run franchise in Dallas now churning out a good AHL team in Texas, and unfortunately, result rather not surprising.
So one of the things you mentioned there was, how a hot goalie obviously, can always be the great equalizer and can kind of bail you out. And I maybe I'm jumping the gun. We want to talk about Cossa later, but I'm just going to trig on it now. I think it was really eye-opening for the fan base to hear Yzerman in his post-media availability, not call out, but kind of challenge the premise of Cossa is very close to being NHL ready. He kind of pushed back on that and was like, you know what, he'll have an opportunity this fall, but he also was not very good down the stretch in the second half of the season, and in the playoffs he got pulled in game one. He literally was not able to finish a game. He wasn't terrible in the final game, but certainly didn't do them any favors either. I am curious of your opinion of Cossa's season, because now I feel like before Yzerman's comments, he had played those games still and the performance is the same, but before Yzerman's comments, people were a lot more of this mindset of oh yeah, look at his season numbers. They're pretty solid. I think this is a guy that could push for a spot, but if you do month-to-month splits or break the year in half, it looks a whole heck of a lot different. And now there's 2 goalies under contract next year at the NHL level. Kind of just, what is your opinion of his season and how it affected the Griffins season?
The team went as he did, not to say that, his struggles caused the Griffins to kind of fall apart there at the second half of the year, but it felt like Jekyll and Hyde. And again, that's kind of indicative of the whole team. But, last year's script was completely flipped on its head, both for Cossa and for the Griffins. And what I mean by that, for those of your listeners who haven't really paid attention to the team last year, was, they came out rough start. It's expected, young team kind of getting their wheels under them. And then around Christmas time, just flip the switch, bam, and we're a game away from the Western Conference Finals. And then this year, like I said, they were on fire to start the season. Maybe didn't look the best, but we're piling the points up, looking to make a deep run. And, what really kind of stood out to me was just how well Cossa rebounded after ugly goals, ugly losses last year, and would turn in, these performances. It's okay, here's the guy, right, that we're going to be seeing. And nothing's more indicative of that than, the third game in the playoffs, you're up 4-1, third period, and just a careless turnover behind your own net ends up in the goal, and now your team's on their heels. They're not playing confident. Another goal, 4-1 lead in the third period, gone. And, it's not, Cossa ended up making over 40 saves and a double overtime loss, but it's again, this reliable structure that this team leaned on for a calendar year just crumbled. And, you had time to figure it out, and no one had an answer to any of it. And it was just game after game making, careless turnovers in your own end. The neutral zone was the number one enemy of this team all season long. There was no transition. You couldn't gain any possession, and you're chasing dump-ins in your own zone the whole time, and your D's got no chance to get it moving. It is
really, I don't mean to cut you off, but is there a concern about the fact that the same frustrations the Red Wings have, the Griffins have? Is that is that something that we should all be oh goodness gravy, this is maybe not going to change? And that I don't know, that's alarm bells going off to me.
As the March collapse was going on in Detroit, and the wheels were really starting to fall off in Grand Rapids, your doomer side is just naturally going to come out and just be oh geez, is this a complete organizational issue? And, I don't want to fan those flames because then it can just really get out of control real quick. There coming down the stretch, I will say, there's a lot of promising aspects. I still think that, Amadeus Lombardi was one of the more impressive pieces on the team, even after coming back from his injury, and I was really happy to see that. Anton Johansson came over from Sweden, and a lot of these guys need, some adjustment period to really crack into the North American game. He just flipped the switch on and was like, okay, I'm on the top pairing, and you guys are just gonna have to deal with it at this point. So it was great to see that. So do I like the mirroring and the systems and the collapses and all of this? It doesn't feel great. You have one calendar year that's really bad and one calendar year that's really good. And which is basically what I'm taking away from the Dan Watson era so far at this point and at this juncture. And at the same time, it's resulted in 2 playoff berths. It didn't feel great. I will say that. And they have a whole summer to think it over and be like, bad stretches happen. Okay, why did bad months happen? Why was there no adjustment? Why was there, where did the wheels fall off and why couldn't we get back on the horse? So I know that's not really inspiring a lot of confidence going forward, but there's some concern there, but I'm not going to say the sky is falling on this team yet because I've seen what they're capable of when they play their game. And you just got to hope that it's in there somewhere and everything's all between the ears.
Sure.
Yeah, and there is a chance here. We got new head coaching up at the NHL level, and they like to mirror those systems. So I feel like there is a solid chance that this system in the AHL does shift to whatever Todd McClellan wants to run. And the reason why, and McClellan explained this, the reason why when the wheels fell off, things got so bad is because the Wings went back to what was ingrained in them, which was the Lalonde system. He didn't call out Lalonde straight up, but basically said that they fell back on what they with the former structure, essentially. So we're going to head to a quick break, though. When we return, I want to talk to you, Andrew, about players that are close to the NHL level in your opinion. Guys you think are the closest, I should say, to making that jump. So stay tuned to segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. There's nothing like playoff hockey, the energy, the rivalries, the nonstop action. With the Stanley Cup playoffs heating up, there's never been a better time to see it live, and Game Time makes getting in the building fast and affordable. Game Time gives you last-minute ticket deals, zone deals for deep discounts, panoramic seat views, and all-in pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ticket prices often drop the closer you get the puck drop, so you can score big without overpaying. You can save huge with zone deals. They pick up the best seats at the lowest price, and you can see the exact seat view you want before checkout, and it's going to give you total confidence. Game Time makes getting NFL tickets even easier as well, so make sure you go there for anything you may need, NHL, NFL, NBA playoffs, whatever. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Now, we've talked a lot in segment 1 there, Andrew, about what went wrong with this team. And certainly injuries and call-ups were a part of that. Cossa inconsistency down the stretch, part of that. But I feel like as Red Wings fans, the bulk majority of the more casual Red Wings fans don't even really care about how the Griffins do. They care about how the prospects are performing in that. And the Grand Rapids Griffins finished the season with a plethora of Red Wings prospects, 4 of which were first-round picks. Cossa, whom we already mentioned, Michael brandsegg-nygard, Axel Sandin-Pellikka, Nate Danielson amongst those, and others too that I'm sure we'll want to talk about. But let's lead off with the 2 newcomers. Small sample size, short stint. But what did you make out of MBN and ASP's transition to North American ice?
Yeah, for sure. I'll start with brandsegg-nygard because he was the one who I think made the immediate impact, especially in the playoffs. He 2 goals and an assist over the 3 games. And, you could just see how involved in the play he was. I love his shot, obviously, with the 2 goals and just his instincts. It was, again, it can be tough to make that adjustment coming over from Europe to North America, smaller ice and everything. So being able to see his game and to kind of, get a bit of a spark in the lineup where, when you have imports at the end of the season, you might expect a little bit, but you're certainly not going to rely on them to try and jumpstart a playoff push there or anything. So to be able to get what they got out of brandsegg-nygard was great. It's a small sample size, so I can't watch the 6 games that he was here in Grand Rapids and be like, oh yeah, this guy's totally ready for the Wings. And then with Sandin Pellikka, I think being a defender, there's a little more adjustment there. And even though I was just playing up Anton Johansson and how quickly he was able to adjust, I think that it felt like a bit more kind of nervousness for Sandin Pellikka. You've seen a lot of pucks fumbled at the blue line and just kind of adjusting to a different system. And granted, his bread and butter on the power play, the Griffins are just atrocious on the man advantage. So if you just expected him to come in and just flip a switch on that, not quite. So I'm trying not to put too much stock on, all the hype for ASP and over in Sweden coming in. That's the kind of stuff that takes time to be comfortable with your teammates and everything. So is he going to come in and immediately fix Detroit? Probably not. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a little bit more time with him in Grand Rapids there. And I think that'd be okay with him doing that, just as opposed to just completely throwing him to the wolves. Seeing how he adjusted here in Grand Rapids, it might be better off for him to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, I really echo those sentiments too. Well, after watching ASP play, and Scotty and I talked about it when they came over. Like, we talked about how we think MBN's going to adjust to North American ice better just because of the style of game he plays. Hard-nosed in the corners, not afraid to get the puck, has a crazy good shot. We thought the thing he would struggle with most is getting open for a shot, but clearly that wasn't a problem because Texas Stars defenders just kept leaving him wide open in front of the net. And it showed. He worked his way from the 4th line to the top line over the course of that playoff series, while ASP predictably struggled a little bit. We knew he was an offense-first defenseman, but we knew coming over, the biggest question mark was how will he play defensively on this smaller ice surface against guys who are bigger and stronger. Like, granted, SHL, again, is a professional hockey league. And his team won the championship a year prior. But the AHL definitely is a higher level of talent and a more physical game on a smaller sheet of ice. And you could tell he was out-muscled a lot in the defensive zone. So I really think that unless ASP puts on a ton of muscle this offseason, he's more than likely going to start the season in Grand Rapids and need a season to adjust over there. But what else did you make of guys like Nate Danielson, another top number 1 pick, who Red Wings fans are hoping has NHL soon in his future?
Yeah, it took Nate, I think, a little bit to kind of get rolling this season. But during that absolutely horrid stretch of Griffins hockey towards the end, I actually thought he was one of the guys who was coming out and being as consistent as you can ask for him. I really liked his work on face-offs overall. I think he became a real dependable face-off guy, especially in his own end. And, in the playoffs, I wasn't a huge fan of seeing him drop the gloves, but at the same time, don't take none. Yeah, I'm trying to keep it family friendly.
That fight was so bad, though.
Ridiculous, dude. Ridiculous.
Like, Hughes is trying to engage, and Danielson spends most of the time just trying to rip his helmet off. And then when he finally gets his helmet off, he takes one glove off. And it's just like, you're doing this in the wrong order, Nate. Like, you just got to drop the gloves and go at it, buddy. I appreciate the thought, though.
Right, and he's not there to do that, so I'm okay with him kind of like, give it your best, but that's why Austin Watson's on the roster.
Dominic Shine, like, you got all those guys.
Exactly. So I liked more what I saw from him as the year went on, and he gets a lot of comparisons in play style and draft position to Marco Kasper and where he was last year, and where I felt I was more impressed with Kasper offensively until I looked at the stats and realized that, Nate numbers wise had better looking offensive numbers than Marco did last year. So that makes me feel better. Maybe, I don't know what I'm talking about sometimes, but I digress. It's I still like, Amadeus Lombardi made a play. It seemed like every time he touched the puck. I like where his game is both offensively and defensively. And, if it wasn't for that injury, you probably might have seen him get a couple games up in Detroit. And it's, I think it's just a matter of time for that kid. I was trying not to look, but
dude, what was that?
A fly flew right into my face. Like right into my face.
It's always something with him, dude. I swear. It's always something. Golly.
Just like right here.
So I think I really like Ammo. I like Nate to kind of break in and get a show next year with this team. And defensively, I don't want to say put a fork in Antti Tuomisto, but I was kind of hoping for big things for him this season, and it really never panned out for him. William Wallinder is another guy with some high draft stock where I don't think he was terrible, but I think we were expecting him to be a step ahead, maybe kind of looking like where Albert Johansson was last year. And I just don't think he's there yet. And that's not, an indictment on the guy's skill or saying that he's never going to make this squad. It's just, you hoped that he would be maybe a little further ahead, and he's just not there. Development isn't always a linear thing, and I think that's something important to recognize as you're kind of looking over these young guys still kind of adjusting to the pro game, and that's okay.
It's one of our favorite sayings here is legitimately, as we say all the time, development isn't linear.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to head to another break. When we return, we'll continue talking about other prospects. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you, Andrew, your betting favorite, which prospect will crack the Red Wings roster. So stay tuned to segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easier to stay in the game, bet before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. New to FanDuel? It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
The NBA.
Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, I believe you're next up, buddy.
Yeah, well, I want to, first off, I want to talk about Lombardi because that's a guy that Brian and I have been really big fans of since he was playing in Flint. And I think you had kind of mentioned a little bit earlier how he showed some signs of progression and obviously had the injury this season, so missed some time. Just kind of talk about his development, what you saw to him this year, and kind of, going forward, maybe what the expectation for him is going to be.
Yeah, last year, you saw the signs, but, first pro season, it didn't get a ton of ice time, but when he was out there, it showed. And then this year, he just exploded onto the scene with a bang and never really kind of looked back. He had the speed bump with the injury, obviously, it left him out for a couple of months, but again, he returns to the lineup and looks like his old self. And he's just, I try and pump the brakes with this kind of description, but I like saying Datsukian. It's a fun word for one. And two, I think it perfectly encapsulates kind of his shiftiness, and maybe not the talent level that Pavel has, but just his ability to, strip pucks from behind where guys might not anticipate it. His hands in tight, his vision to set up his teammates. He set up brandsegg-nygard with his second of the postseason. So I love everything that he can do with the puck. He's dangerous with it, without it. He's, whether it's setting his guys up, whether it's going in for a chance on net. And I think he's stronger on the puck than he was last year. And I think that was like a big, he had the talent, but it was all just kind of about growing into his frame. And you're starting to see a little bit more of that, little more strength in his game. And again, I've touted how I've enjoyed his defensive game on top of that, which is, I don't want to say kind of like the main focus here, but everyone in juniors can score, right? And then in the pro game, it's, can you be responsible in your own end? And that's kind of not necessarily the make or break for a lot of these guys, but it can go a long way into, how much an NHL team can trust you. And I think they can trust Ammo. I don't know necessarily where he would be if he were to kind of crack the lineup in training camp next year. Like kind of what line he would be on, or kind of what your expectations for him would be. It's a big summer for him. If he can keep working out, kind of keep progressing as is, I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of be a surprise entry in the lineup there.
Yeah, he had a really nice breakout season with the Griffins. He had 14 more points in 26 fewer games this season with the Grand Rapids Griffins, which is wild, crazy. And on top of that, he only had 7 fewer points than the point leader Joe Snively in 28 fewer games. He had this season 40 points in 44 games. Snively, who led the team, had 47 in 72. So you can only imagine what a full season of Amadeus Lombardi would have helped contribute to the Grand Rapids Griffins. He's definitely one of those ones who, one of those late round gems for the Detroit Red Wings that you just hope that you hit on every once in a while. Now, late round, mid round for sure, 4th round pick. I often get him confused, the round confused with Soderblom, who was taken in the 6th. But, Soderblom himself's another late round gem, and if it weren't for him getting promoted, we'd probably be talking about him on this too. But he got called up partway through the season and played his way into a full-time role. I want to know too, Andrew, real quick, just rapid fire thoughts on other prospects that maybe didn't have huge seasons, but still it was an important growth year for them. Guys like Shai Buam, Emmett Finney, and Andre Betcher. Finney, I know, joined once his season was over in juniors, but I just want to know your quick thoughts on those 3 guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed Shai Buam's game and his progression. I love the physicality that he brought to the team defensively. I think not that they were missing out on it through most of their defensive pairings, but it felt like it was an added element that I liked when he brought it out, and I wish he would do it more, and I'm really excited. I think he's kind of one of the guys I'm going to key on next year. Is all right, this is your first big year, and you're comfortable now. Let's see you take that next step towards kind of becoming more on the radar, becoming a regular in the organization. Emmett Finney was another one where he comes over kind of a little later into the season, but I loved his game. He was tenacious out there. Sometimes during some of these ugly losses, it seemed like he was the only one who kind of had his feet moving, and maybe I would have promoted him a little higher up in the lineup, where it's all right, if no one else feels like they're gonna get that motor going, let's get this Energizer Bunny out there, and maybe they'll kind of bleed in through the lineup. And I like that aspect of his game, and it's another one where he's kind of getting his feet wet now, and then next year maybe it will be kind of provide those building blocks to gain some trust from the coaching staff and lead to better opportunities down the line. And I'm sorry, who was the other guy you named? I didn't.
Shai Buam.
Yeah. Oh no, I talked about Buam.
Yeah,
Finney,
Betcher.
That's right. He was a sleeper, man. I know he didn't get a ton of ice time in the top 6 or anything, but just kind of a great learning experience for him in the bottom 6. And we kind of played our own version of Sound the Horn in our group chat with all the Grand Rapids media members. And I like throwing in a nice little Becker pick every now and then. And, I know he was a big point scorer in junior. I don't know how well that's going to translate here in the pro game. But again, ferocious in front of the net. I love to see it more consistently. But again, he's a young player. And I like, I think he's got all the tools there to be a good pro contributor. And it's all just going to be reps and time. And, you're going to see guys moved up and promoted next year. And he's going to be in there in the mix of like, all right, let's throw him on the power play. Let's see what he's got. And, I like his shot. I wish he would use it a bit more. But, it's also hard when you're playing 10 minutes a night or whatever. So it's all just, like I said, that linear development. Let's see. You've got the building blocks now. Next year is going to be the big one for him.
I mean, I would say that 20 points in 60 games in a bottom six role in your first year professionals, pretty good production. Obviously, you would expect a bigger role next year and that production to rise, but that's nothing to sneeze at. That's not a bad first year as a professional hockey player.
Absolutely.
All right, it's time for the question, Andrew. I want to know, as the beat writer of the Grand Rapids Griffins and the Chicago Wolves, who is your betting odds favorite to make the Red Wings roster next season out of training camp?
Well, I did say I wouldn't be surprised if Lombardi would make it, so I'm going to stick to my guns. I'll lean on Ammo. He was, again, kind of that wow factor all season long. Really impressed me. I think he would have gotten a good shot if he didn't have that injury. But next year's going to be his big one, and an impressive showing in camp. You never know, or he might take the Marco Casper route of we'll see him for 2 games and then they'll never see him again. So but you never know how how the roster is going to be constructed and all of that and what the coaching like. So maybe they lean on Danielson instead. Maybe they would like him to kind of get more comfortable on like a 4th line role with a guy who's got, like I said, his penchant for face-offs and might be a little stronger in the defensive end. And don't be surprised if you see Nate up there as well. Kind of try and give him a spark there like Marco, but. I mean, if there's a spot with maybe some opportunity on that second power play line, I'd give it to Ammo right now, and I probably wouldn't look back in doing it.
100%. Scotty, do you have any final thoughts?
100%.
It's always one of my transitionary phrases. That and absolutely.
Just totally not applicable to what he just said, but no, I don't think so, man. Andrew, appreciate you as always. Got to be our most our most frequent guest by a pretty hefty amount, probably double digits at this point.
It's 1 Andrew, 2 Max, I think, is the
for sure. And yeah, I don't think that's particularly close either. So appreciate you as always.
Glad we have that all on the record. 1 Andrew.
Yeah.
We love you, Max. I promise.
No, I think that's it, man. We ball.
Yes, we do. Oh, I'm sorry, 100%. Scotty, Andrew, thanks so much. Check out Andrew's stuff over at the Calder Times. Scotty, don't listen to his Tigers podcast. Don't do it. He's a jerk. Anyways, we'll be back on Monday. Same time, same place. It's your team every day. We ball.